My first ever watch was a Timex Cub Scout watch that my father bought me in the 1970s. And this watch lasted until I got my second watch, which was a Timex Boy Scout watch. But I think that watch only lasted about 6 months before it broke. Finally, I got my first Casio digital watch in the 1980s. It was ugly, but you just couldn't kill that damn thing, and it always kept time, as long as you changed the battery out every couple of years. I spent very little time inside when I was young and was very active and rambunctious as a child. I've been an avid outdoorsman my entire life, so I quickly learned two things about watches. Number one, don't buy a super expensive watch to beat on. And number two, buy a high quality, reliable watch. Contrary to popular belief, you can get a high quality, reliable watch at a pretty reasonable price, especially in the current market. And I'll show you some examples of that in this video, and everything will be under $1,000. So don't worry if you have Rolex or Omega or Tudor Envy. I'm not going to trigger you in this video. I'll break this video down into separate chapters for hunting, fishing, and adventure watches, and add some additional information to this video as well. Then I'll reveal my preferences for the perfect watch under $1,000 in each category. If you know me, or even if you watched my channel for any length of time, you know that I spend a lot of time in the water. I wade saltwater flats worldwide with my fly rod numerous times a year, and I spearfish regularly. I also spend large portions of my life standing in cold mountain rivers hunting for trout. If there's water nearby, you're probably going to find me in it. And I think a diver type watch is what I prefer for fishing. So why wear a watch at all while you're fishing? Well, if I'm on the saltwater flats, I want to keep track of the tides, and a watch lets me glance down at my wrist and, figure out what's about to happen. If I'm standing in a mountain stream, I'm always curious about, what time the hatches are occurring around me. If I'm spearfishing off of a boat, we might fan out across the reef to hunt fish and agree to meet back at the boat at a certain time. So as you could see, there's many reasons as to why a watch might be important for you while you're in the water. Your fishing watch needs to be as waterproof as possible, easy to read in the bright glare of the sun or underwater, and it must be highly corrosion resistant, especially if you're going to spend time in salt water. A good ISO certified dive watch usually meets all of these needs. My first real dive watch was a Seiko Air Diver that was gifted to me about 25 or 30 years ago. And this thing went through absolute hell and back, but it still works today. I stopped wearing it because when you'd adjust the time on it, the actual mechanism and face inside moves around a little bit. But barring that, it's still waterproof and it still functions. But there was one glaring issue with this watch. It's a quartz watch, and when the battery would run out, it always seemed to run out at the worst possible time, usually when I was out fishing or spearfishing, and I absolutely hated that. Then I went out and I got a Seiko Prospect Solar watch, which was a fine solar-powered dive watch. I love the solar-powered movement on that, but, there's one constant to being in the tropics. There's always plenty of sunlight, so a solar watch is great for that. Unfortunately, while I was spearfishing in Baja, a spring bar on that watch must have failed, and that beautiful watch is now somewhere at the bottom of the Sea of Cortez. And I learned a hard lesson about my dive watches or any watch for aquatic environments that day. Um, Number one, I need a retention strap, like a NATO strap, when I'm in the water, and make sure you have good spring bars on your watch. A lot of watches don't really come with good spring bars. That Seiko Prospex wasn't my first solar powered watch, though. Before that, I had several Citizen EcoDrive watches, and I noticed that the EcoDrive mechanism is more accurate and the charge seems to last longer than the Seiko Solar does. So I do prefer the Citizen EcoDrive mechanism in my solar watches. When Citizen came out with the new rendition of the ProMaster EcoDrive Diver's Watch, it took the watch world kind of by storm. It's in the same price range as the Seiko or Orient solar dive watches, but the Citizen is the only one that's actually ISO certified for diving. It stays powered for months with no light, and it charges with both sunlight and artificial light. You can look at this watch. I think it's very attractive, and the EcoDrive movement is probably the most reliable movement at this price point. I think the Citizen EcoDrive watches are kind of the ultimate beater dive watches. I wore this watch on a NATO strap for a while, and took it fly fishing with me a bunch of times. But when I moved to a Marine National strap like this one, I was much happier. And this watch wears an Erica's Original Marine National strap, and they make the best straps, I think, you can buy for a hard use watch. And Erica's strap is secure and it's very comfortable. It handles water and the elements very well as well, in my experience. And the slight stretchiness on this puts less stress on the spring bars and makes it more comfortable to wear when your wrist and hand kind of expand and contract with the weather and activity. I also upgraded the spring bars on this watch to auto fray spring bars. And the only thing I didn't like about this watch was the band that it came with and the spring bars that were on it. So if you upgrade the band and the spring bars, you have the perfect watch for the water, in my opinion. And you could buy this fantastic watch for only $250 right now. But there is another dive watch for under $1,000 that I feel is a huge step up from the Citizen. Say hello to the Certina DS Action Diver Watch. This Swiss beauty will run you about $700 to $800 in stainless, and this watch, in my opinion, gives you Omega or Tudor quality at a quarter of the price. This is a true 300-meter ISO certified dive watch. It has internal shock resistance engineered into it for really hard impacts, so it's going to take a beating. It also has a highly accurate movement in it with no plastic parts and an 80-hour power reserve. And as you'd expect at this price, the crystal is a sapphire crystal with AR coating. The face of this watch mirrors a traditional dive watch, but the black ceramic insert in the bezel with the unique font makes this watch really stand out from the rest of the dive watches, in my opinion. This is actually a really classy dive watch at home in the ocean or having fun downtown. And the included NATO strap with this really goes awesome with this watch. It's actually a good color combination, especially for the summer months. And I think this is just an overall fantastic watch for under $1,000. Is it a better value than the Citizen ProMaster Diver? Probably not, but it certainly is a better value than an Omega, Tudor, or Rolex, in my opinion. This is a classy, feature-filled, great-looking watch that can handle real work. Does knowing what time it is while you're hunting even matter? Well, when you have legal hunting hours, time is very important, in my opinion. If you hike deep into the wilderness and need to pay attention to the time so you can start hiking back out before it gets dark, time is also important. Your cell phone can be used to keep track of time, but cell phones run out of battery and they can break. And even if that doesn't happen, because phones are pretty good nowadays, it's a pain in the ass to constantly pull your damn phone out of your pocket, especially if you're wearing a pack or heavy layering or an upland vest. It's a real pain in the ass to pull your phone in and out of your pocket every time you want to know what time it is. So if you wear a watch and you're curious about the time, just a quick glance at your wrist and you're done. I also like analog faces on my watch because I use them out of habit to track my direction of travel while I'm hiking. Remember, I'm an old Boy Scout, so it's second nature for me to use my watch for navigation. And lastly, it's human nature to want to know how long you have left, and a quick glance at your watch satisfies that curiosity. So, although you definitely don't need a watch while you're out hunting, it can be useful to you. In my opinion, time is important because there's just never enough of it. I tried using cheap Timex Expedition watches for a long time, but they always ended up breaking on me. Then I used this Swiss Army watch for years, but it was on its last breath and it was time to upgrade to something else. I also tried the Marathon GPQ that everybody loves for hunting, but honestly, I've had quartz watch batteries die at the worst times before, so I wanted to kind of gravitate away from quartz. I also hate constantly winding mechanical movements, so those are out of the question for me. And I finally settled on what I think is kind of the perfect watch for hunting. This is the Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic with a titanium case. The titanium case is very light, so it doesn't shift around on you while you move, and it has a non-reflective matte finish on it. It has a sapphire crystal, which really takes a beating without scratching, and you could see in the face here, it's got 24-hour time on it, which is really helpful when you're traveling through international airports. The H10 movement on this watch has 25 joules, an 80-hour power reserve, and there's no plastic parts in this watch. It's one of the most reliable movements made today, and I use an Erica's Original Marine Nationale strap on this watch, and it's literally the most comfortable strap I've ever used on a watch. It offers the retention of a NATO strap, but with half the weight and much better comfort. The Marine Nationale strap, combined with the titanium case and practical 38 millimeter case size, makes this watch so light, it doesn't even feel like you're wearing a watch at all. And I bought this titanium watch for $800, but places like Joma Shop have them for well under $800. But, I really wouldn't spend more than that on a hunting watch. And before everyone starts trying to flame me in the comment section, I understand not everyone can afford an $800 hammy. But for just over $200, you can get a Seiko 5 automatic field watch. Even though it has half the power reserve of the hammy and lacks many of the features, I think at $200, this watch is a steal for the price. I hunted with the Seiko 5 field watch for years with no issues at all. If you prefer a solar-powered field watch, the Citizen Garrison Titanium is impossible to beat for under $300. If you really want a quartz movement, the Bertucci A2T is hard to beat for $200. But do your research though, because cheaper watches are always going to have some type of drawback. So maybe you won't be spearfishing on a reef in Belize or hunting Cape buffalo while you're traveling abroad, but you need a watch for under $1,000 that could keep a vacation on track in any environment. A general purpose watch needs to fit in while you explore the pyramids on the Giza Plateau or enjoy a meal at a fine restaurant in Florence. It can't attract the attention of thieves on the streets of London, but has to look good while you sip Karak chai in Dubai. A general purpose adventure watch needs to be rugged, reliable, and affordable, but it also has to look good in any setting that you take it in. I use a plain $600 Hamilton khaki automatic with a stainless bracelet for this duty. It has just an awesome, fantastic H10 movement in it with 25 joules and no plastic parts. It has a sapphire crystal, 100-meter water resistance, and a dial with everything you could ever want in it. It has a great bracelet with a fully machined clasp with micro adjustment. And this is way better than any Seiko bracelets in this price range. This is something that a guy who only wants one watch could be happy with. So for my adventure watch, I went with a Hammy again. But this Hamilton khaki field automatic isn't the only option in this price range. So let me discuss some other options in this price range and give you some examples of what people close to me carry. I have a friend that I grew up with who made some really good decisions in life and became very wealthy as a result. He's always in Brazil, Argentina, Korea, and Turkey for much of the year. He actually doesn't wear an AP or a Patek or a Rolex or anything like that while he's traveling around the world. He wears a Seiko Alpinist every day while he's traveling. I think the Alpinist is a little bit on the ugly side. You know, it's not my taste, but he loves the goofy look and he wears it all the time. Regardless, the Alpinist is a good, reliable watch that fits in any setting and it really won't attract unwanted attention. I have a client and good friend of mine who I've discussed many times on this channel. He's been to Africa more than 25 times. I think he's working on his 30th trip this year. And he's hunted in Turkey, Mongolia, and Russia. And he's the only guy I know that owns a Patek Philippe. But he wears a Hamilton Murph when he goes on worldwide adventures. The Murph was just an instant classic and might be my favorite Hamilton. So watches like the Murph, the Alpinist, and the khaki field automatic make great general purpose adventure watches. And my youngest son lives in Germany and he travels all over Europe constantly. And this is the watch he wears on his travels. And this is Becca's general purpose watch. It's a Longines 34 millimeter Conquest. And this thing is just built like an absolute tank. And it's rated for a whopping 300 meters of water resistance, which is really incredible for a non-diving watch. And this tough general purpose ladies watch is under $900 right now. So this is kind of my wife's general purpose adventure watch. And let me discuss what I think makes a good general purpose adventure watch. A general purpose adventure watch should have at least 100 meters of water resistance because you don't know if you're going to be in a hotel swimming pool or, fall out of a boat crossing the Nile. I think a general purpose adventure watch Also needs to be ultra reliable, so no cheap Timex watches or anything like that. Um, I like my general purpose watches to have a sapphire crystal that won't get scratched to hell and look ugly while you're traveling. Um, your general purpose watch also can't be too flashy. Um, you don't want to attract the attention of thieves, but it has to look good enough to fit in a more formal setting. So, a general purpose watch can do a little bit of everything everywhere and look good in classier settings. You don't need an expensive Rolex Explorer or Omega Aguatera to have a general purpose adventure watch. The watches that I featured in this chapter achieved this goal for under $1,000. Sometimes the desire for fashion, features, fancy movements, craftsmanship, and nostalgia go just right out the window, and we just want a cheap, hard use watch that we can beat the hell out of. When these watches break or become unusable, we throw them away and buy another one. The Casio G Shock was a game changer in the watch world. Even today, the G Shock is extremely popular. Most special forces guys wear cheap G Shock. I've hunted in Africa with professional hunters who wear Casio G Shocks. Many guys locally here in the logging industry wear G Shock every day. I use G Shocks when I go on off road trips, especially when doing trail maintenance or recoveries. I'm always dealing with broken drive lines, axles, and suspension components, and I don't want to wear an expensive watch for wrenching in tight places covered in gear oil. If you're going on an adventure that requires any type of hard labor, don't buy a watch over $100. And the only watch I recommend at that price is the Casio G Shock. I bought my first DW 9052 in the late 1990s for $15. The screen on that watch cracked when my arm slammed into a rock. So I bought this one to replace it about 14 years ago for $30. And if you look closely, this one's pretty damn beat up too. I think these watches are now about $50. These are rugged as hell. I mean, they'll go through anything. Even when I cracked the screen on my first one, it still worked perfectly. The only issue with these is that you constantly replace batteries. I then purchased a GA 2100 for I think $75, $80 to replace it. And I like the big analog dial on it. These are known as Casiokes because the case has the exact same shape as the AP Royal Oak watch line. The battery on these lasts probably just under 3 years, so expect that as being part of the Quartz watch experience. Notice that the only watch in my hard use beater category that I recommend is G-Shocks. You won't find anything better for $100 or less. They work great, but I will admit they do look a little bit uber tactical or cheap. And, Timex makes the Ironman line of watches to compete with these, but I'll tell you the truth, the G-Shock is a lot tougher than those Ironman watches are. I also think these can be put into the role of a hunting watch, and they probably make an excellent hunting watch. But I really don't like the aesthetics, readability, or complexity of a watch like this. But if you want the toughest watch for the price, you can't beat a G-Shock. Just accept that they're very ugly. I really only use these for off-roading or for doing hard work. If you want a more attractive G-Shock with better features, You can move up to the watches with the metal accents and a solar powered movement. This particular watch right here is a GBM 2100 with a solar movement and Bluetooth capability. The solar movement on this watch isn't as good as the Citizen EcoDrive in my opinion, but it's very reliable and I actually think it's better than Seiko Solars. The Bluetooth is actually kind of useful on this watch to tell you the truth because G-Shocks are a bitch to set up and the Bluetooth feature on this automatically sets your watch for you. So if you travel from New York to Australia, you simply sync the watch with your phone really quick and it will automatically set everything in this watch to your current time zone. The Bluetooth also enables phone finding, but that feature is kind of useless in a real life application with this watch because it doesn't detect your phone from that far of a distance. But this watch is $250, so it's definitely priced out of the beater category. It's also not a very elegant or classy watch, so it's not versatile like a Hamilton or Seiko. It's more of a daily driver watch, and I'll wear this around on weekends sometimes. So let's talk about smartwatches for a minute, which took off in popularity, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago. Apple, Samsung, and Garmin basically cornered the market on smartwatches, and smartwatches kind of became an extension of your cell phone, but on your wrist. My wife, a lot of the times in her daily life, wears a Garmin watch. Well, because Apple and Samsung watches kind of suck compared to Garmin. Garmin eventually morphed the smartwatch into what is basically a Casio G-Shock with GPS at 8 times the price. The smartwatch didn't really take off in the adventure world until the tactical YouTube influencers started wearing those huge Suunto or Garmin Phoenix watches, and everybody copied them to try to look cool. But lately, the smartwatch is starting to actually decline in popularity. Since you have your cell phone on you already, a smartwatch really makes little sense. After the trendiness of the smartwatch wore off, people realized that a watch that tells you how many steps you took or tells you when you have an email wasn't worth the hassle of charging it. And to tell you the truth, charging two devices that do the exact same thing turned out to be kind of stupid. Let's discuss the psychology of wearing a standard watch. And by standard watch, I mean not a smartwatch. And yes, the psychology of wearing a watch has been studied extensively in many controlled studies. A 2015 study by the University of Glasgow confirmed several earlier studies proving that standard watch wearers were more punctual, conscientious, and emotionally stable. They repeatedly replicated these results, and I've honestly also noticed this throughout my career and personal life about watch wearers. People who wear an Apple or Samsung watch are constantly distracted by this device. They use their watch as a cell phone substitute, and the study proved that smartwatch wearers were also less punctual and less conscientious than people who wore standard watches, who were more focused. We all have those buddies who, when you swing by their house at 4 o'clock in the morning to go hunting or fishing, they're just never ready to go. They cobbled together their gear while making you late for the hunt or the fishing trip. And they always forget shot shells, licenses, sunscreen, or their fly box. Those are the non-watch wearers among us. So there is a clinically proven psychology attached to people who wear a standard watch. Time matters to them, but not at the expense of being distracted. Being punctual has value to the watch wearer, who is usually just as reliable and precise as the watches that they choose to wear. If you do wear a watch hunting, fishing, or just on adventures around the globe, leave your super expensive Rolex or Patek watches at home. Don't take them with you. The worst part about a watch is that they really stand out to thieves while you're traveling. To a thief, your fake Rolex or your fake Royal Oak might as well be a real one, so no flashy watches. Besides, who the hell wants to beat on a $15,000 or $20,000 watch out in the field? That's pretty stupid, in my opinion, especially when you can get a watch for under $1,000 that's pretty much just as reliable. And it's for this reason that I kept my recommendations at a sensible price point for a hard use watch in this video. Whether you're hunting in Alaska, fishing the flats on Christmas Island, snorkeling around a reef, or on an African safari, using a watch might be important to you. Hopefully, I gave you some great ideas for your next hunting, fishing, or adventure watch. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.